A lot has changed since our last update. I'm really proud of how quickly the team reacted during the course of last year in order to put capacity in place to serve customers immediately.
We grew during the pandemic, basically within 9 months of 2020, as much as the 50 years before.
We produced everything that everybody wanted, regardless of cost to OPHART.
We've been hard at work since then to really implement and optimize those investments so that we have the capacity to serve customers during a potential fourth wave or even future situations like this.
Lead times for all of our products are back to pre-pandemic levels at the worst case, and in most cases are better than pre-pandemic levels.
I'm proud of the quality standards we delivered during the pandemic.
The main reason that OPHART was able to deliver the same high quality products during the pandemic was down to our staff. So we were able to bring on new staff members and train them up with existing staff members very, very, very quickly.
That transfer of knowledge worked really well and the quality was kept up.
The biggest long-term effect that you will see to customers is that additional capacity is a permanent fixture here. So we have purchased extra buildings, we have built extra buildings.
We expanded multiple facilities.
We have bought new machines.
50 new injection molding machines.
We have bought new tools.
Over 100 new tools.
We have bought new assembly lines. All of those things will still be here to produce products long after the pandemic.
One of the challenge we never experienced before is supply chain issues.
That's a two-pronged problem that we have. Number one is availability of raw material, and number two is the price of raw material. Three biggest commodities we use are aluminium, stainless steel and plastic. All have increased by between 18 and 40% since the beginning of this year.
We are reacting by increasing the stock of raw material. We are, where we can, designing our products with new materials. The pandemic and changing patterns of consumer spending has put an incredible strain on global shipping.
By producing our products more locally and purchasing our materials locally where we can.
We have moved production to Ireland and to Canada from dispenser sites out of the Philippines to react faster.
That will help to mitigate against some of the cost increases that we see, and it will also help to mitigate against the long freight times and the long lead times on freight that we're seeing.
I think we learned a lot during the course of the last year. First of all, I think we learned really how critical our role is in helping break the chain of infection.
Everything that we made during the pandemic and every dollar that we made during the pandemic was reinvested back into the business again. And that the underlying demand of the business was to create as many hand hygiene opportunities as we possibly could. And that was more important than profit or money.
I always base everything on our mission, breaking the chain of infection. If we can improve that, every development should work towards that goal.
On behalf of everyone at OPHART, I want to welcome you to our annual Brain Forum. My name is Peter DeKoning. I'm on the marketing team here at OPHART, and it's my honor to be your MC and your moderator for this year's event. One of the things that we'll be looking at during this event is we'll be taking a look at a whole host of issues, including artificial intelligence, an overview of the science. This, of course, is our second Brain Forum that's happening during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we really hope to be able to host this in person. And we were making plans to do that, and we were communicating with you, and we were excited to be able to do this together. There's something special when we're able to be in the same room and have both the formal times of training, but also the informal times of connection. And we really missed that last year. But with the rise of the Delta variants, we knew it was the right call to pivot to an online forum again. And I'm really proud of how the team was a part of that pivot and designed some really engaging and great content for you today. On the web page that you're looking at right now, you'll see that there's 2 spots for questions down below. There's one spot down here that talks about audience survey. And this is a chance for us to interact with you, to ask you some questions, and for you to connect with us. And the other one is questions from you during our presentations. We'll have 4 talks, and in each of these talks, you'll be able to ask us questions. Why don't we try this right now? We'll start with an audience question. I'd love to know what city you are viewing this from. So you can take a look down in the audience survey section. If you're able to answer this in English, that will kind of bring a consistency to all our answers. But please note that during the talks, when you want to ask a question, ask in the language that you're most comfortable with, either German or English. On the Brainforum website right here, you can also see that there's an agenda. And we're going to hear some talks from our CEO, from a member of our executive team, from a scientist in our new technologies division, as well as a guest speaker who has expertise in neuroscience and artificial intelligence. And on the other side, you'll see some videos that we already have up. As the forum continues, we're going to be posting new video content, and that will be available for rewatching right on that side. A quick note before we go any further, just about COVID-19 protocols. Since we are a hygiene company, it feels important to note this. Everyone that you see here on camera will be maskless, but each presenter is fully vaccinated or recently tested or both. And everyone behind the scenes, behind the camera, will be masked, and we're observing social distancing throughout. So if you haven't taken a moment yet to let us know which city you're viewing this from, I'd encourage you to do that right now. I want to welcome our CEO, Heiner OPHARDT. During your 8-year tenure as CEO, your focus has been definitely on our mission to break the chain of infection. But you've also been known as someone who's bringing deeper collaboration between all our global sites, as well as continuing a tradition of investing heavily in innovation. Let's take a look at some of the answers of where you are viewing this from. We can see Frankfurt, Issam, Beamsville. Shout out to the Canadian team. We've got the Philippines, great to see you there. Switzerland, Brisbane, Mexico City, incredible. So from all over the world, we're really thankful that you're spending that time with us today. And as we prepare for our opening remarks, I just want to thank you for your partnership during this past year and a half. It has been a challenging journey for all of us. But in moments like this, we're so thankful for the ways that you have journeyed with us. And with that said, Heiner, I'll leave you for your opening remarks.
Thank you. So actually the frequency, what I mentioned last year too, is increasing. Yeah. So when is the next pandemic? Could be in another 3 years. Where is it? What is it? And we have to, I think, get prepared for it again and again. And we have learned a lot out of this pandemic. Before, like when we looked at swine flu, it was a relatively short occurrence. And now it's really a long dragged on thing. And our restrictions are hard on our personal level, and also on the business level. But let's look at also some development trends in our products, and I picked our most common product, our Ingoman dispensers, and this dispenser was created in 1967, so end of 60s, and the main reason for designing that product for my father was probably the reliability. There were dispensers on the market, but they were less reliable, and that it could handle disinfectants, in particular alcohol. The next step was basically in the early 70s to design a standard packaging, so hospitals wouldn't need to change dispensers when they want to use a different disinfectant, different product. So that was very helpful. The next thing was in 2000, basically our first Ingoman Classic series. There, the main reason was that this dispenser was sterilizable, and from there on we move one step further. In 2006 we have Ingoman Plus, where there was more flexibility in the equipment. We could change basically the packaging and also the pumps in the dispenser very easily by front loading, and that helped us, or helped our customers as well. The next one is basically a green dispenser, our first attempt there in 2011. It's our Ingoman Veco dispenser. Whenever you push the lever, actually we generate the energy to transfer our compliance data, the usage data or fill levels to a server. Another little thing, but important at that time in 2018-19 is the single-use disposable pump, one-use pump, which can be used in the IMP dispensers, in the Veco dispensers, in most of the hospital applications. So you don't need to sterilize anymore your products or your pump. The last one is in 2020 our Smart Nose, which can be put on the Ingoman dispenser, and again it's about compliance and retrofitting dispensers. The interesting part is, like in the 70s, we started as a niche manufacturer of stainless steel dispensers for a very narrow hospital market. But today we are doing smart solutions for the whole healthcare area. And what has changed dramatically is 50 years long, we actually tried to convince our customer to wash their hands. And we always had to enforce it with studies and other people, studies from other people, and like to say, hey, hand washing really pays. But the consumer was hard to convince. But with this pandemic, the end user wants to wash their hands. I think that is a fundamental change in attitude. Yeah, like they're looking, people cannot live without disinfecting their hands. What will be the new normal out of that? Perhaps, yes, we will disinfect our hands more, and this will stay with us. And the experience with flu and cold seasons somehow have disappeared in the last 2 years. Like we don't experience that anymore, yeah? So perhaps it's a good thing to keep doing this and disinfect your hands. On the other hand, we also probably will wear masks in the circumstances that we feel some symptoms. Yeah? And you see that when you're traveling Asia, there's a certain people will wear masks, and probably they have a flu or a cold mainly, and they don't want to give it to other people. I think these two things will stick with us also in our societies. I'd like to tell you a little story. Our Irish manager told me this thing in the beginning of the pandemic. People from the area actually drove up to our company and wanted to buy dispensers. And we are not set up for selling anything. We are a manufacturer, and there is no shop in the facility to sell to the end user. It was a big surprise to us. But you can see, or we really felt the need what people had. They wanted disinfectant and they wanted dispensing equipment. This is neat to see or to experience. What will be also the new normal? We have vaccines now. And the mRNA vaccines have been developed in a very quick way, within less than 12 months, basically from design to production. That was amazing, and we have a lot of criticism how it was purchased and how it was done, and some of the criticism is probably correct, but overall, it's an amazing job these scientists did. The new way of vaccines, I think, will stay for us forever. Like, there will be more adaptation of these methods, and it goes as far as some of the designers or chemists say we might get cancer drugs out of this too, with the same kind of style or way of making it. The other thing is what is on the other side is basically video conferencing. Video conferencing was there before the pandemic, but I think it really took off. It really established itself to everybody. In our private lives, to connect with our grandparents or with our children, or with the little ones, but also in business. And I think my feeling is this video conferencing tools have done more for business than actually the money governments handed out to businesses. This was a bigger support to survive than actually cash. I think also in the near future we will see live translations during the video conferencing. Like basically when I talk to our Japanese distributor in Tokyo, I will speak German and he will hear it in Japanese, and vice versa. Like he will talk and I will hear it in German. Is that about the 4Ds here, the slide? Okay. It's hard to see at the moment. But okay, so 4Ds, the new normal. I picked 4 points basically showing what will happen also in my view in the near future and will be the new normal. Digitalization, decarbonization, demographics, and duty and inflation will drive our businesses. And I will go into each of these points. Smart dispensers will create a lot of data, and we see that on our servers today, but they need to be analyzed. Data interpretation will be the key to success. For example, what was surprising to me, half our business, this part is not surprising, but the assumption out of it, half of our business are cost-effective plastic dispensers. And at our first thought was like these plastic dispensers will actually reduce or take market share from our higher end metal products. But this is actually not the case. What the data shows, high-end plastic dispensers actually are replace low-end plastic dispensers. And our stainless series have gained market share, which is really surprising to me. Consumers take, I think, today advantage of long-life products. And they understand they cannot afford to buy cheap. Next thing, decarbonization. Our goal is to be CO2 neutral in 2045. We need also some new innovations to reach that goal. Also next month we will meet with all the managers of our plants and around the world to discuss the next steps to reach that goal. Like what they think are the low-hanging fruits and what we have to put in place longer term to reach this 2045 goal. Demographics, like especially here in Europe, we are struggling with it. It doesn't look good. I looked at some statistics from Switzerland. There are, like I think it was a 2000 figure, 4 people have to work for one retiree. In 2030, 2 people will work for one retiree, and you can see the problem. We are struggling to find skilled labor, but it's also a big struggle for society. Duties, inflation. We all have heard in the last few years me first attitudes, and I think it's not only the one country which will pop up to us, but in our mind, but there are several countries who have that attitude, me first, and putting duties in, try to cut out other people entering your market will have a negative effect on the supply chain, and at the end it will create higher costs. There's one notion I personally think of. Data can have also a negative effect. I tell you a little story. I drove a few weeks ago in the Black Forest, and there was a construction site, and I had to take a detour, and my GPS recalculated, and at the end it showed me a way straight up the road, and I basically would hit the highway. But on the last few hundred meters, there was a do not enter sign. And now the decision you have to make, do you follow your GPS or do you obey to the sign? And sometimes I think it's actually hard to see it, you trust your computer in your car perhaps too much. And there's a term also what police uses, like there are people who drive into rivers and lakes, and they basically, the police calls it death by GPS. It is something there's a saying basically, you shouldn't trust the data you have created or faked yourself, but we find it today that we don't apply common sense also to the results we see. But a lot of results are actually new to us, yeah, or can be a surprise, but we need to understand it. Next thing is basically a quote from Oscar Wilde, and the average gives the world its existence, the extraordinary its value. The average gives the world its existence, the extraordinary its value. It's an interesting thought. And if I take the first part of that quote, yeah, we still need to focus on the products which make us money, yeah? The average ones, yeah, like dispensers, packaging, pumps, yeah, our bread and butter. These products pay our bills, and we need to refine them. Again, the average gives us existence. The other part is, we like to see what is extraordinary in our portfolio, and there are a few things where we can develop product out of cool ideas we have and behavioral changes we see what happened during the pandemic. Like a little bit similar to what I mentioned before, people are demanding dispensers and disinfectant in pretty much every public place. If you go to a restaurant or if you visit your town hall or whatever you do, you want to be able to step up to a dispenser and disinfect because you have touched something. Better hand hygiene, which is the next result from it, is increasing also the usage of the dispenser or of the throughput of the dispenser. And we see also a trend towards touchless equipment. We have seen tripling throughput in dispensers, and it has tapered off a little bit now. But I think within the next 5 years, we will reach these levels we have here, we had during the pandemic. Yeah? So it's time that people will pick it up again and will be more cautious about it. Ensuring that dispensers are filled, smart and predictive levels, I think we will hear from other people a little bit later. Upgrading equipment. Perhaps you take a 10-year-old Ingoman dispenser and it can be made into a smart device within 2 minutes. You just pop up the face shield, you pull a little bar and you put in the smart nose, and this nose can transfer then bottle exchanges, how much output you have done during this hygiene event. So when you basically disinfected your hands, all that can be done when it was used, and you can build a lot of different results out of this, compliance data out of this, which can be shared with other people. It is a very sustainable model to change the front nose. Like our dispensers sometimes hang 30 years on the wall, and we can upgrade them once with this smart device and perhaps twice every 10 years. Perhaps the next time we need to do it because the Wi-Fi standards or the security standards have changed, and therefore we need to take the nose out and put a new one on. It's a little bit like a suggestion perhaps for the car manufacturers that they need to change the dashboard in the car, that you don't need to buy a new car. You know, whenever you get a new iPhone, this doesn't communicate or with all the capabilities it has with your car, and you buy a new car. But why? And that is what I like about the modularity of our dispensing system. It has been mentioned in the introduction film as well. We gave everything for the mission, because we believe in breaking the chain of infection, and that was where we put everything, but we fell short of it. Yeah, we gave everything for our mission, but we fell short. Why did we do that? Like as mentioned before, we bought 100 tools, 50 injection molding machines, we bought buildings, we hired people, and still it improved overall in the numbers, but there have been still a lot of not happy customers, let's say it this way. And why is that? Like, I see it as well as a problem which we didn't face with swine flu because it was way shorter. It's when you run a facility, a manufacturing facility with a utilization of 100%, one breakdown in molding equipment or machines or tooling will not bring only down this one line, but it will affect also all the other lines, because now the next product can't be produced because you're 100% full, and then it has actually a domino effect. So I have never seen that before, but here it became very obvious. And it is not that we didn't calculate downtime in our lines, like you say 85%, 90% uptime of a line, that is what you will have. But if we, just for an example, would have 50 lines at OPHART, and they all have an uptime of 90%, and we multiply the 90% with 50 lines, we end up only with 50% uptime. Yeah? That is an easy calculation. So it was, hopefully it was not that bad, but it shows you the effect of this domino effect in production when you're really 100% loaded. Other things, as I think John O'Malley mentioned, our CEO, there were issues that Philippines shut down for 1 month completely. There is supply issues, there is shipping issues, there were several other issues. But what we are doing as well is trying to modernize or update our ERP systems, that we are more transparent within the organization where things are and how they develop, and that we can get earlier the indication if there is something going wrong. There are two things also what I read about, which are probably the new normal, what people say. That is implementation of Agile, and the other thing is, I just have to look one page forward, like is the self-management. But let's stick with Agile. Agile incorporation, Agile accepting failure. And I think that is, our world is going faster and faster. Our developments need to be faster and faster. Product launches need to be faster. And probably there will be more failures too. And we, I think, need to learn to accept them a little bit. It's not what we like to see, but I think that will be the market today. But there can be things also like we design a single-use pump, what we have seen, and tomorrow the recyclability or sustainability will take over. So you can throw everything away you have done before and you start all over. And that can be significant amounts you have spent in design time and also in tooling. So, and then there could be the next step that the customer wants something, a combination of both. I think as a partner on both ends, on distribution and as a chemical company, we need to understand each other that these things will happen and that we actually should change quicker, as quick as possible. That is what Agile actually means, that we will change course and actually don't invest into this anymore and invest all our resources into the new thing. It's hard to do because normally you have a project line out and we stick with it and we finish it and we deliver it, but it's actually not a product anymore what the market wants. Further, I think that is where partnership will look quite different. Let's look at the next thing, just a short view. Self-management. I think self-management has been tried basically also during our home office time. You will see people who perform very well and actually do a better job for the organization than at their workplace. And I think there will be also a mixture between home office and workplace. But and there's other ones who struggle with this. So teams are more and more also in our organization international teams with different countries they're working from. But it's about what we talked about, demographics. We don't find skills always in the right location, so we have to hire internationally, and we have to put these teams together, but they need to be self-managed, self-motivated people. Future is just a word for confidence, a word for optimism. I'm at my last slide. Future is just a word for confidence, a word for optimism. It's a funny explanation of future I've never heard before, but it makes some sense, and I liked it, so I included it in my presentation. Yeah. Some writers call our times today the new dark ages. And that is because we have all the information, but we can't find a common interpretation. We have the information, but we can't make sense out of it anymore. We need to understand, we need not to understand, I think, everything, but we must think it. I think that is, we don't, like I'm an engineer, I don't understand global warming to its end, yeah? but I need to believe in it and I need to work towards the avoidance of CO2 or whatever we want to look at. Yeah? So understanding is not always a requirement, but it is thinking it. Survival will be based on solidarity. I like to leave you with another quote, and that's my last sentence. It's from Confucius, and he said, "Do not curse the darkness, light a candle." Do not curse the darkness, light a candle. Thank you.
Thank you, Heiner, for your opening remarks. And I love that we need that solidarity to move into survival together. I have a couple questions, just an encouragement for all of you to continue to ask your questions during each presentation. I've got two here, and the first one for you, Heiner, is how has OPHART been dealing with supply chain issues? And in brackets here, it talks about raw material and price increases.
Yeah, a little bit. I think Ken mentioned it also in the introduction video. We try to do a little bit more long-term contracts, also store more at our facilities, so buy smarter a little bit, or get also a higher, a better price because we buy a bigger batch of things. But it's also, yeah, I think we try to do more production in different places to eliminate the supply issues. There is a, as much as you all know, a container shortage from Asia, and delivery times getting longer and longer. So we try to minimize that we also manufacture the products in different locations and that we can react faster.
For the next question, you get to put your futurist hat back on. And this question is, how are partnerships with customers, how will that change in the future because of what we've been through in the pandemic?
There is some interesting developments, and I mentioned it a little bit. Do you have, can we work together as partners? Partnership, everybody talks about partnership, but nobody lives it. Yeah? Or nobody is perhaps not right, but very few live it with you. And that is what I mentioned before, is also taking risks together and say, yes, we will fail together, but also we will win together. And then the failure, hopefully we have more winners than failures, and then you have a successful business. Yeah? And we need to actually do that together. And that goes into trust and all these kind of things. If we can do that, that will make us survive. And if you don't do it, I think it will be a blame culture, and basically both partners will fail.
Well, thank you for those answers.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So continue to ask your questions throughout our presentations. We've been looking a bit about the future, but one of the things that we're proud of is that we recently won an award based on OPHART's past and what we've accomplished. And my colleague Marcus will share this news with you. And after Marcus speaks, we'll hear more from a member of our executive team, Ken Friesen, who will talk about the vision that shapes the products we make and the solutions we offer.
We are happy to announce that OPHARDT Hygiene has officially received the award German Standards Brand of the Century. OPHART's success story began with the Ingoman in the 1960s. At the time, alcohol-based hand rubs were rapidly growing in popularity, especially in the healthcare sector. In 1967, Hermann OPHART introduced the first Ingoman dispenser as an innovative solution for dispensing alcohol-based hand rubs. The Ingoman quickly established itself as a reliable and popular dispenser in clinics and hospitals. Since then, OPHART has developed a variety of effective dispenser systems and pump technologies to push hand hygiene forward. Today, our dispensers are smart, which means they record fill levels and usage data, and can even provide feedback directly to users. The recent Brand of the Century award is a testament to years of dedication at OPHART and underscores our industry-wide influence as an innovation leader in the field of dispensing systems.
The Brand of the Century is a great recognition for the hard work that the OPHART teams have done in the past. We're motivated by that tradition, as well as the enormous challenge that we continue to face to elevate the public health hygiene standards. We're excited to share with you today some of the recent and upcoming innovations that we have to address those challenges. Our innovation agenda is focused on both smart and sustainable solutions. Smart to improve hygiene standards and to reduce the overall cost of the delivered solution. And then as Heiner talked about, sustainable both in terms of our own operations. He mentioned our climate initiative commitment to be climate neutral by 2045, as well as in the design of our products to reduce the environmental footprint focused on sustainable design and the circular economy. With that, let's have a look at some of the recent innovations in our Ingoman product line.
The Zollernab Clinic is one of the first hospitals in Germany to use the innovative Ingoman Smart Nose. A total of 46 sanitizer dispensers in the emergency department are equipped with this new smart technology. We spoke to the ICP and the head physician of the emergency department about their initial experiences with the Smart Nose.
Uns ist daran gelegen, dass wir das
It is very important for us to quickly report hand disinfection behavior back to nurses and doctors when they disinfect their hands. The staff get real-time feedback to know if they are disinfecting their hands with the right amount of sanitizer. It's also important for us to get timely information about the dispenser infrastructure in the infection control department. Of course, it's essential that the dispensers are installed in places that are easily accessible and fit into staff's workflow.
häufig der Händedesinfektionsmittelspender bedienen. Das ist uns ganz wichtig. Der entscheidende Vorteil ist in der direkten...
The key advantage of the Ingoman Smart Nose and its intelligent technology is the direct feedback it provides our healthcare workers in the ER who are sanitizing their hands. It alerts workers once they've got 3 milliliters of alcohol-based sanitizer. This feature has been really well received by clinic staff. They realized I really have to press the lever twice to achieve good hand hygiene quality and increase effective infection control.
Ich muss wirklich den Hebel zweimal betätigen, dass wirklich die richtige Menge Händedesinfektionsmittel auch benutzt wird.
Die technischen Möglichkeiten finden die meisten Mitarbeiter gut.
The technical possibilities of the feedback LED have been very well received in our department and can be especially helpful for new healthcare workers as they learn to implement proper hand hygiene. This means that we also have to spend less one-on-one time teaching staff about hand hygiene.
Hygienemaßnahmen vertraut zu machen.
With the Ingoman Smart Nose T, we are expanding our OPHART Intelligent Solutions portfolio. This new retrofit is compatible with the manual 1-liter dispensers of the Ingoman series and can be easily installed onto existing hardware. Our OHMS software for healthcare has been refreshed with a completely new design. These improvements have made evaluating and improving hand hygiene even more convenient for hygiene departments. In addition, the new alert function in the OHMS software will help improve the placement of dispenser infrastructure in clinics and hospitals. At the end of the year, OHMS will be expanded to include a new task management feature. When the dispensers have reached critical fill levels, an assigned person, on the maintenance staff for example, is notified and can refill the dispenser immediately. Task management is an important addition for effectively improving hygiene infrastructure.
From that video, you can see how important feedback is to healthcare workers. At this point, we're going to introduce our second interactive question. In 2020, a study that was published in the Journal of Hospital Infection, it explored healthcare workers' attitudes to how hand hygiene performance is currently monitored and assessed. And a majority of respondents believe that the current method of direct observation is insufficient. So we'll pop up a question here, and the question is, what percentage of healthcare workers believe innovative monitoring solutions would be useful? We'll give you a second to answer that. Our innovation focus in the Engelmann series is heavily focused on the smart aspects and feedback throughout the system, on the dispenser, at the ward level, and at the entire hospital level. The feedback indicator that you saw in the video was a well-received function on the E version and is a prominent feature in the T launch that is launching now. And so whatever investment decision you made initially to invest in E or T dispensers, you now have the seamless option to upgrade those to smart solutions by replacing the face shield with a smart nose solution. Feedback targets are available at the ward level, so healthcare providers can set targets amongst their team and constantly monitor their progress towards reaching those goals together. And then lastly, at the entire hospital level, we've completely redesigned the user interface, and it's pretty slick. It's simple and powerful at the same time. On a single dashboard, you can see overall performance and easily and quickly drill down to the lowest level of performance over time within a ward or looking at hand hygiene, efficiency, and compliance. Okay? Also, at the end of the year, like we talked about in the video, we're expanding the functionality, not just modernizing it, but expanding the functionality to include alerts and workflow rules for an expanded population of maintenance professionals in the hospital. Our focus on sustainability is demonstrated through our single-use pump lines. As healthcare regulators increasingly recommend single-use pump solutions, we are intensely focused on ensuring the highest level of sustainability. That starts with not having to throw away your entire dispenser investment in order to get compliance. Our pump line is completely retrofittable with our IMP series, and all you do is insert the new pump and you have immediate compliance. We've also achieved the highest level certification of recycling standards from InterZero. As you know, our single-use pump line is completely compatible with our RX series. Last year, we introduced the RX5 manual as well as the RX5 touchless. It's our premier plastic Euro bottle series. And this year, we're introducing the RX5, or the RX10 manual, to complete the range. The RX5 touchless uptake last year was tremendous, as it's really the perfect solution for a lot of point-of-solution, countertop, entryway, office locations, and really a lot of applications outside the healthcare sector. So the RX10M really completes this series. But it's really not just healthcare workers that are interested in improving levels of hand hygiene compliance. Let's take a look at what we're doing to help public washrooms and the public setting achieve those high standards as well.
At OPHART Hygiene, we're committed to offering innovative, connected solutions that improve hand hygiene by combining reliable data with software applications. Welcome to our washroom of the future. How can you guarantee guest satisfaction while reconciling the demands of hygiene regulations, a lack of time, and qualified personnel? OPHART's OWMS software and new generation of intelligent dispensers of the new Santre Plus series help you elevate the washroom experience for your guests while also improving maintenance and cleaning efficiencies. With data collected by the OPHARDT washroom monitoring system, facility management can organize cleaning teams in a much more targeted manner and only deploy when necessary. Built-in sensors detect when a dispenser reaches a critical fill level and automatically sends this data to our OIS cloud. Using an app on a tablet or smartphone, facility management and cleaning staff are automatically assigned tasks based on a dispenser fill levels and can plan routes accordingly. Our open refill dispenser systems offer you maximum flexibility in the choice of filling goods and enable significant cost savings. We recently launched the series with 3 standard and 3 premium powder-coated colors that are sure to impress. Soon, the dispensers will be made in a cartridge format as well. The new intelligent stainless steel Santral Plus series meets all requirements of a washroom of the future. Cost reduction through optimized refill cycles, increase productivity in facility management, increase customer satisfaction through product availability. Fill level monitoring helps fight the pandemic.
If your experience is anything like mine, public washrooms could use a massive upgrade, and Santral Plus is the perfect answer. There are some really nice design and aesthetic improvements to this line with attention paid to the finest level detail. But the 2 biggest things to introduce are smart and sustainable. The series, as we talked about, is out of the gate smart enabled, so you can choose that option, or smart ready. It's already designed into the solution, or you could choose a hybrid, a few that are smart enabled to start, but already smart ready with the rest of the population in order to easily upgrade them over time. And they come out of the gate already plugged into and enabled in our OPHARDT washroom monitoring solution. Again, we have a module-based approach with this application. You can start with a smart washroom solution that monitors critical details of the dispenser, its fill level, battery level, usage, consumption, things like that, and alerts facility management staff to actions. And it's already seamlessly connected to a powerful and popular facility management solution, so you can unlock future applications and modules over time. So get in on the ground floor and build with the system over time. It's also sustainable. The foundation of our sustainability solution is really designed around durability and longevity. And you've got that in the Santral series. If you make a choice with Santral, you're making a decision for the environment and protecting your investment over time. It's also available in refillable solutions, and we'll talk a little bit about the new drive platform in the future. It's a best-of-class solution in terms of energy consumption and a lot of other elements as well. In the short time that this series has been available, these features resonate with customers. It's already our most successful product launch, and it's only been available for a short period of time. All right, let's switch gears to look at some of the new developments in our cartridge systems.
This year, we laid the foundation for the future of cartridge dispensers. We introduced our first connected cartridge dispenser, the KX Smart, equipping you to monitor and improve hand hygiene like never before. The KX Smart seamlessly connects to our powerful OIS cloud, and a simple tap is all you need to set up your device with our OIS installation app. On this foundation, you'll be able to unlock the power of AI and the cloud to increase efficiency and prevent infections. This past year, we also launched our next-generation dispenser system, the X10. The X10 is at the heart of our new Santral Plus dispenser series, and we're sharing our most advanced dispenser drive with the world. Whisper quiet with supporting for multiple doses, the X10 arrives with a brand new portfolio of high-efficiency, sustainable pumps. It's a platform that promises to help companies save cost and get to market quickly with their custom dispensers. It's your look and feel and our technology. With the KX Smart and X10 system, we've laid the foundation for a new era of next-gen technology and super-powered insights.
So that's an introduction to our new X10 series. We've designed it to dramatically decrease the time to market, to massively increase the customization for you, and really reduce the cost of a new introduction. As you can see from the video and from the diagram, we've got an X10 platform available in a touch-free and a manual version. We've got a complete lineup of pumps, and we have a SnapFit PET bottle that is available in the system. And so the decision you have to make is to adopt the program, to invest in a front plate, a front cover, and a back plate, and you've got a quick, low investment, highly customized solution to offer to the marketplace with best-in-class internal performance. I talked a little bit about the pump platform. We are already in production with a wide array of pumps across all the varieties as well as dosage ranges. And from a sustainability standpoint, again, smart is an important aspect, and sustainability is as well. The platform has post-consumer recycled plastic that's FDA approved at a very high content level. So the pumps are at above 70% or about 70% PCR content, and the PET bottle is available in a 100% post-consumer recycled PET as well. So one other topic that I'd like to talk about in cartridge systems just briefly is the hospitality amenities marketplace. Single-use hotel bottles are out. Now, this is a situation that has largely occurred in Europe, but it's a new phenomenon in the North American marketplace. And sustainability is an important decision for hotels to make. OPHART is introducing our new hospitality series, the H3, into the market at exactly the right time. The solution is available with a dispenser, a pump range, and the bottle as well, and it's available in single, double, and triple units. And we're excited to launch this into the hospitality marketplace as it's coming back alive right at the right time. So as we talked about, as you can see, through the Engelmann series, the Santrel, and our cartridge solutions, all of our innovations are really focused on smart and sustainability, and it's a hallmark of all of our innovations. At this point, I'll bring back Peter with any questions.
Thanks, Ken. I have a couple questions. Keep them coming. Thanks for submitting your questions. The first one we've touched about smart a lot, and this question is related to that. What are the next steps in artificial intelligence at OPHART?
Wow. Okay, so smart solutions today really deliver information about the dispenser status, and so that you can go react to those things. We've got some patents that we've received around artificial intelligence in order to be predicting patterns of behavior, whether you need to change a bottle now or refill now because it can last a weekend or not. Things like that. And so building artificial intelligence in is the next step, and it's already in our thinking and in our roadmap. It's not immediate, but it is on the roadmap. And I think the important thing is, we talked a little bit about that we took every dime from the pandemic and reinvesting in the business. OPHART is invested in this technology and will continue to innovate to make the improvements over time.
That's great. The second question is related to the X10 system, and we had briefly talked about pumps, but the question was, what pumps form the basis of the system?
Sure. We are in production with the system now, and so we have liquid lotion pumps, we have foam, alcofoam pumps, spray pumps already available now. And we also have them in multiple dosage ranges, and that's really due to a patented dose adjustability in the dispenser that maintains performance over that full range of dosage options that people have available. Another little secret is that part of the naming of the X10 is because there are 10 planned variants of the pump that are already designed into the system. So one, for example, is a dual material pump, where you could, at the same time, simultaneously dispense two materials and mix them at the point of dispense. So things that we can be creative with in the future are already designed into the system.
That's great. These are the questions that we've had for you, but you asked the question of our audience, and we can take a look at some of the responses here. This was about how receptive are healthcare workers for innovative ways of improving hand hygiene compliance. And Ken, I'm going to throw it back to you for the answer.
So the answer is actually 71%, and sometimes counterintuitive. Often people think about monitoring solutions as a big brother solution, where the healthcare providers might not want that level of constant surveillance. But really, you can see from the video, from the testimonials, and from this recent study that healthcare workers are looking for this type of feedback. And honestly, if you did this study in the public space today, I'm sure you'd find an equally high number, or maybe even higher.
Yeah. Ken, you've taken us on an incredible tour of some of the product launches from this past year. But the story of the past 12 months would be incomplete without also talking about some of the challenging ways that we journeyed together as OPHARDT and customers. And so I have a little video to share about that journey.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming.
Dr. Tedros has convened an emergency committee about the novel coronavirus epidemic, and the question was whether this event constitutes a public health emergency of international concern.
The situation with the novel coronavirus.
Coronavirus is on the front page, but then human-to-human transmission.
It has been a long day.
Alarming levels of spread and severity. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
We have now over 200 million infections and more than 4 million deaths due to the SARS-CoV-2 virus worldwide since the outbreak of pandemic. That is one of the greatest infectiological disasters of modern era.
At the peak of the pandemic, it was really a feeling of sitting together in the same boat and trying to fight the storm, because the majority of our customers are dealers, and we together tried to satisfy the need of the people.
What had we done in OPHARDT in view of this pandemic? We started with protective measures of employees and therefore production in the company beginning March 2020. The important measures were mandatory wearing of medical masks, strong separation of production shifts and home office for all outside of production. We create a differentiated pandemic plan and implement a vaccination campaign.
So our main concern dealing with customers during the pandemic was really trying to deliver as quick as possible, often looking for alternative articles, just to make sure that there is the chance for hand hygiene at the point of need.
So we could overcome the big challenge of increasing requests of our product.
Now that we are through the worst of the peak demand, many relationships with customers are really closer because we fought the storm together. Also, some new customers and relationships arise from the pandemic, now have the chance for common growth to break the chain of infection wherever possible.
Our next presenter is a researcher with over 50 peer-reviewed journals to his name. He did his PhD in physics at the Johannes Gutenberg University of Mainz. He did his postdoctorate at the University of California, Santa Barbara in the Department of Chemical Engineering. And then he moved back to Germany to work in the Fraunhofer Institute in the field of neoprosthetics. Then formed his own research group as a Max Planck associate, specializing in microsystem technologies. And now he's a member of our new technologies division, working on innovative ways to break the chain of infection. Please welcome Dr. Siegfried Sendelmann. Stiggy, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Peter. Thank you.
It's good to have you here. I am so excited to hear what you have to share. What will you be talking about today?
Well, I will give a short introduction and on a scientific view of a hygienic update, keeping up with Heiner's talk. So it's going to be a couple of slides, what has been last year.
That's great. Looking forward to hearing the overview.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you very much. So, thank you, and I like you all welcome to the Brain Forum 2021. And like in the next couple of minutes, I will show you some nice publications which came up within the last 12 months to me in the sense of COVID-19 and also in the sense of hand hygiene. But before I like to start with this, I like to introduce more myself in order to give you a more scientific view. So I'm seeing the world under scientific glasses. So I'm not only working in the division of new technologies at OPHART, because I'm working there, I need to do a good networking to universities. And that's why I'm also a lecturer at the University of Applied Science in Bonn, where I'm teaching the sustainability of microsystems, as well as I'm a lecturer at the University in Strasbourg, so in France, where I'm giving insights in the technical aspects of hygienic solutions. And last but not least, I'm teaching here in close to Issum in Kleve at the University of Applied Science the basics of hand hygiene. And last but not least, and this is the most interesting and most challenging thing, is I'm since almost a decade, I'm a guest researcher at the University at Freiburg, where I do have access to an S2 lab. So I can address all upcoming questions concerning infectious diseases or pathogens, which is actually really, really great. So when I was thinking what to talk about in the next couple of minutes and where to start, I realized that's an easy question because we start with COVID-19. The recent numbers are kind of scary. So we have 217, over 2 million infections and 4.5 million of deaths. This is a severe pandemic we are facing now over a year. But there are also good aspects on it. Good aspects, for example, is the vaccine. We do have a vaccine. And as being a researcher, it's really encouraged me that within a year we could develop new techniques and implement on the market new vaccines. And this is great. So it took only a year, and the others would say it take already a year, but for me it's very fast. But before, we had other measures. So for example, we had the 3 Ws, how it's called maybe in the North American sectors, and here in Germany it's the AHA rules, which I like most. So it's basically watch your distance, wear a mask, and wash your hands. So we have social distancing, wearing masks, and hygienic rules. And if we look a little bit closer to those measures, I can identify 2 really drastic measures. So I am a father of a 5-year-old kid, and he hasn't seen his grandparents for over a year. That's drastic. That's really drastic. But what bothers me more, even that, is wearing a mask, because I like to see the smile of the people. And you don't see my smile anymore. So I think those 2 are really drastic rules. So let's look at the other rule, hand hygiene. Washing hands, cleaning hands, disinfecting hands, whatever you want. And when I was sitting on my desk and thinking, what can I do? And what is the connection between COVID-19 and hand hygiene? It's basically nothing, I thought. The infectious pathway is made by the main infectious pathway is made by aerosols. So hand hygiene and COVID-19, they don't go together. So why do we have this measure? And then I looked up in the literature, and Hirose et al. Last year, they published something which is very, very interesting to me, and you can see it. The lifetime on our hands, on our skin of COVID-19 viruses is 4 times longer than for influenza, so for the flu season. And so it is very important to perform hand hygiene in the pandemic. But there's even more to hand hygiene, so think about it. I come back to my personal life. So at the moment, 5-year-old kid, I'm married, that's great. Happily married, maybe. But we are looking for a house now. And many people in Germany and maybe around the world, they want to buy or build houses. So we have urbanization in progress. But you may now think about what does urbanization is going together with COVID-19 and hand hygiene. Well, it's pretty like this. Urbanization means we have more contact to wild animals. Having more contact to wild animals, we have a higher risk of a zoonosis. And coming back to COVID-19, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, the report in US of the Secret Services, there was one possible origin of COVID-19 mentioned, that it is a zoonosis. So a zoonosis means it is coming from the bed, jumped on some cats, and the cats were eaten by the Chinese, and then the virus got from the animals to our humans, to us, the humans. I don't want to go into political details because I'm a scientist, so I just assume it is a zoonosis. So I hope you can deal with that, because the word for me as a scientist is very easy. So it's a zoonosis. And if we now think about it, if COVID-19 is a zoonosis and due to urbanization, we will get more and more likely that we have zoonosis, we need to react fast. Well, concerning all this theory, I like to support the theory is that 70%, so 3 out of 4 infections will be zoonosis-based. This is what the CDC in the US stated this summer. So there is a reason to react fast, to prevent an infection to become a pandemic, or just to prevent the infection, so break the chain. And if you think about the measures again, vaccine wouldn't be an option because it takes some time to develop the vaccine. Masks and also social distancing, although it's great to have this and to accept those rules, they don't have so much acceptance if you say, okay, we have a pandemic, let's do social distancing. Everybody says, okay, we can do it. But if it's like, yeah, my neighbor has an infection, so social distancing, this might be hard to implement. So hand hygiene will be the key for the future. And hand hygiene will be the key for the future because it's simple. It's the simplest measure you can have. So everybody can wash their hands. We can do it anytime in the night when I wake up and I'm bored, when it's during the TV breaks, whatever, during soccer games, I don't know. We can wash our hands anytime. It's only 30 seconds. And it's very easy to do. Even my 5-year-old kid, he's able to wash his hands very, very well. So I'm quite proud. And also the WHO, so the World Health Organization, stated that hand hygiene is the primary measure to reduce infections. So that's great. But there's more to hand hygiene. And we heard Ken Friesen talking about sustainability. And I like to get it in a broader sense. So hand hygiene is even sustainable. And this was very, very interesting, especially because I'm teaching a little bit of sustainability. And this was a publication McGain in 2018 stated. So basically what they did is they looked at healthcare-associated infections in the hospital, and they looked how much energy is consumed when they have to treat it on the ICU, so an intensive care unit in the US. And they were coming up with about 280 kilowatts hours, and I don't know if this is much. Ask yourself, is it much or not? Well, it is not much, I would say, but it's per day, and in the US. So this sums up. And if we recalculate it and take the energy model or the energy harvesting model of the US into account, this correlates to a CO2 production of 180 kilograms. Yeah, now you question yourself is what does this go along with sustainability? Well, Gastmeyer et al. In 2016, I think, they stated in their publication is that if you perform a proper hand hygiene, you will be able to reduce the infections of healthcare-associated infections. So, taking this into account, we can save up to 30% of this CO2 per day. So it's 60 kilograms per day. And this makes me saying it is sustainable. So hand hygiene is sustainable. This really strikes me a lot as a researcher and as a teacher. But I know many of you are more into business. So that's also why I also looked, when I was preparing the talk, something about businesses. And there was some nice, discuss-worthy publication out. It was Bagapelli, I hope I pronounced it right, Bagapelli et al. This year in 2021. And they were looking in India the cost effectiveness of different measures. So basically, they looked at masks with respiratory fit and respiratory unfit ones, wearing masks with hand hygiene, just hand hygiene, and so on. So they mixed everything together. And I don't want to bore you with the details and science. So let's get to the bottom line. So they basically said, all these measures for COVID-19, they're not cost effective. Well, of course they're not, because it's very easy. You have to pay for it. If you want to do it, you have to pay for it. So it's not cost effective. This is not surprising to me or to you probably. But if you look a little bit more details into the results, you see that hand hygiene only is the most cost effective measure. So hand hygiene is easy, sustainable, and cheap. And if it's cheap, it can be done, it can be also used in low-income countries, which means also low-income countries have a little possibility to break the chain of infection. And I think that's great. Yeah, coming back to the new normal, as Heiner introduced today, I like to think about what has changed COVID-19 for us in the hand hygiene. And I was really thinking about this, and I discussed it with my wife. She basically said, I don't think anything changed. Because we are doing proper hand hygiene, we are just pushing our boy to wash his hand all the time. Sometimes it's more striking on the floor and crying, but then you pick him up and put him to the sink, that's okay. However, something changed for me. When I go shopping, I'm cleaning the handlebars of the cartridge because I'm afraid of the bacteria there. It's just a thing, a psychological thing, I think. I don't know if it's really helping. But this changed. So what I want to say with it, the awareness of hand hygiene changed. And when I'm looking to my family, they're all now more involved into washing hands, cleaning things, and also when they have contact to an infectious person, they start to do social distancing just immediately. So that's what we learned. And we see all in all, in my family, that hand hygiene is strong. It's a very strong measure, and it's great. Well, I don't want to bother you with my family problems, so let's go back to science. And this is also proven by the Cosmos study in the summer. The Cosmos study was a study of, I think, a social group in Erfurt, and they were looking and asking people if they perform hand hygiene and if they have an increased perception. And they're coming up that overall 80% now think hand hygiene is important. And if you look a little bit closer, 83% they think it's important when they're coming from outdoors or for public places. Even 84% they say it's important for public transport. And even almost 90% say it's very important if we have contact with an infectious person. And that's great. So this is really, really great. So the key message of my talk today, of my very short overview is keep it up. That's easy. We need to keep this up. We need to serve on this high level to help to keep up the hand hygiene. And before I'm ending, I just want to look not only to the future, but also to problems we have. So for example, the influenza season can also be fought with measures of COVID-19. So Kirkbrus et al. In 2021, I think it was in spring, they analyzed the influence of the measure of COVID-19 with respect to influenza, so to other infections. And if you look to the numbers in 2017 and 18, over 300,000 cases were in Germany and 25,000 deaths in Germany due to influenza. And what they figured out is that due to the measure of COVID-19, especially wearing masks and washing hands, this reduced drastically by up to 20%. And 20% out of 25,000, it's a lot. So that's great. We can save lives, and that's good. So the seasonal influenza can be reduced by wearing mask and proper hand hygiene by 20%. And I think that's something. So we see there's a big, big potential health in it. And now I talked about health and I talked about Germany. Let's do a question for you as in a quiz. You can type it down directly in the internet, on your webpage. What is the economic burden in the US for a flu season? So how much money cost an influenza season? I will give the answer after my talk. And I just want to look to the almost last slide is also another topic what I like to address, and which bothers me personally a lot because I'm giving a lecture about it about, let's say, 1 or 2 sessions. It's the antibiotic resistant. And this already was stated by O'Neill in 2016, where they said 700,000 deaths were due to the infections with antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And they stated, and this kind of scares me, in 2050, and it's soon, there will be over 10 million. And that's a high number. That's a very, very high number. So in 2021, and that's why I digged up this publication again, the World Health Organization sounded really alarmed because they stated that 43 out of 43 is basically none. They are not sufficiently effective against the most dangerous bacteria, and they means antibiotics, of course. Sorry, I forgot that. So 43 out of 43 are not working really good. So we do have a problem. And that's where it's coming up now. Hand hygiene would help the antibiotic resistance. I'm sorry. But why? When I told this to my wife, when I was preparing for, she's like, why? You wash away the antibiotics or what? No, it's not that. Because just assume you perform a very good hand hygiene. You're reducing the risk of infections by a factor of 30%. We heard this in Gastmeier. So just throw away the numbers. So we reduce it by a significant number. If we reduce the infection, we also reduce the use of antibiotics. And if we reduce the use of antibiotics, we are also reducing the risk of coming up resistant bacteria to antibiotics. And so we see again, also with recent problems, with future problems, hand hygiene is everywhere cost-effective and sustainable. And hand hygiene is the key measure. And that's why I like to say it again, we need to keep the high level up. And as my postdoc was in California, I like to say it with the Californian words is, we need to surf on the high wave of the hand hygiene and keep it up. So that's what I thank you for listening for this short overview, and I'm open for questions. And also thank you for attending the Brain Forum 2021.
Thanks, Ziggy. I think maybe we'll start with our audience survey question. So the question was, what's the cost annually in the U.S. of seasonal flu? And we've got a diversity of answers here, as low as $6 billion, as high as $20 billion. It looks like the most popular one right now is $15 billion. Oh, we're even seeing some lower ones. Okay, so new answers coming in. Live results.
Live results, yeah.
Ziggy, what's the correct answer?
I think in the publication they stated something about $11.2 billion on the season.
Wow.
I think that's the number. So it's 11.2. It's quite a lot.
Yeah.
I would like to get it.
I'd take a
Then I could retire.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I'll take a small percentage of that amount.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also have a couple audience questions, and the first one is, do you think that we can keep up this high level of hand hygiene over the next few years?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think it's possible. It will decay a little bit, but what I saw in studies when we installing new dispensers or like introducing it, for example, to the school kids, we saw a high increase, and then it slowed down a bit, but it was still on a very high level. So I think on the one hand, it will stay high enough, I would also say. This is personal. And the other thing is we need to also force it that it stays up. So I think we always have to remind it that's important. Because I think, as we heard from Heiner, this circle of infections or pandemics or epidemics, I don't want to draw it too bad, is closing. So that's why I think we need to keep the level up, but it will be high. It will stay very high, but we also need to have some measures to keep it up.
I'm sure that's part of what you're working on behind the scenes. New technologies, new encouragements. My second question here is, and this is very topical, very timely, which hand hygiene measures do you rather recommend to fight coronavirus? Hand washing or disinfection?
Well, actually it depends. So generally speaking, and this is more a personal opinion, I would always, because I'm not in the medical sector, so I'm at home, I would always stick to hand washing. But if there is no possibility to wash the hands, of course I will disinfect the hand. Basically, anything is better than nothing. So even just rubbing like this is better than doing nothing. However, it's a virus, and it's an enveloped virus as far as I know. So I'm not the microbiologist, I'm sorry for that. I should ask my colleague. I'm just a physicist. So I think it's an enveloped virus. So for this, an enveloped virus, both is okay. So the alcohol, which has amount of 70% and 30% of water, it's working. And also the soap is working quite well. If you have a non-enveloped virus, so we got lucky in this pandemic, I would say, the alcohol has to be increased, and we have to go to higher or to more aggressive disinfectants. I think that's the case. But this is a personal opinion of a non-biologist.
Yeah, I like the humility. I'm just a physicist. Thank you so much for this overview of the science. We're going to stay focused on science, and our next guest will be talking about neuroscience and artificial intelligence. Awesome. Thank you. I'm so pleased to be joined today with Dr. Henning Beck. He's an author, a lecturer, a columnist, a researcher. He's specializing in neuroscience and artificial intelligence. He's a TED Talk alumni with a PhD from the Graduate School of Cellular and Molecular Neuroscience from the International Max Planck Research School. Dr. Beck, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
I'm very excited to hear your talk. I mean, when we think about hand hygiene, we don't often think about neuroscience or artificial intelligence. So I'm excited to see if there is a connection between these two topics.
Well, of course, I'm pretty glad that I get the opportunity to speak at this event because in the briefing calls, I was really excited about the technologies you are developing, and every kind of new service, new product has to start in the brain with our ideas, and I'm hoping to give you some insights from my perspective now. Human brain versus artificial intelligence, or in other words, who's holding the upper hand? Computers who are about to control the world, or the human brain in our way of thinking that is curious and able to adapt to new situations. My name is Henning Beck. I'm a biochemist by profession. I studied biochemistry and neuroscience in Tübingen. And Ulm was in Berkeley, California for 1 year in 2013. And now I'm here in Frankfurt, Germany, and I'm interested in how does the human brain think? How does it differ from artificial intelligence? And how are humans able to get to new ideas, to solve problems in new kinds of ways, how nobody has ever done it before? And this is what I'm going to speak about. What is the difference between artificial intelligence? What are the obstacles? What are the problems that should be faced when you want to apply algorithms and digitization processes? And what is our unique human capacity when it comes to create new ideas, new products for the future, for years that are about to come? When you ask people, what is the most important resource of our days? Many people say, okay, it is data. Companies collect data, we analyze data, we want to benefit from data. But keep in mind, data itself is dead. Data is just letters and numbers that you can process electronically, but they don't have a meaning in itself. And importantly, you can measure data, but you cannot measure an idea. You cannot measure knowledge because When are you truly innovative? When you have 1,000 thoughts on your mind, or only one, the good one, the game changer? So there must be a difference between intelligence in our ways of thinking, in our human ways of thinking, and how algorithms perceive information and data. Because if you apply data to describe a certain problem or a certain situation, you end up with something different. This is what we call information. And information is all around us. The internet always at our fingertips, smartphones, wherever we go. But keep in mind, and don't mix up information with acquiring knowledge or having an idea. Because you can Google data, you can Google information if you are good, but you cannot Google an idea. You cannot Google knowledge, because having an idea, acquiring knowledge, this is what is happening on your mind when you change the way you think. Not what you think, but how you do it. And I'm going to prove that in the next 40 or so minutes, that this will stay analog in our close future, will not be replaced by artificial intelligence, because this is what human beings can do best. So everything that you see here, that you experience right now in your environment, is of course just the surface of what is going on in reality. Most of the things run subconsciously, which makes it very hard to investigate, but even more interesting. So let's zoom into the brain to check out what is actually thinking there, hopefully, and how to benefit from this way of thinking. At first, just a few words about the brain in general and how it differs from computers. If you look at the brain, many people say, okay, the brain, this is something like the ultimate calculation engine, something like a supercomputer we are carrying in our skull. Many people say, okay, if you look at the brain and how it's working, the brain is extremely fast, it is super connected and highly accurate, very precise when we think. So when you are thinking right now, I do very hope, you know how fast you can think. You know what you can do with your mind. And contrary to that, what can you do with a computer on the other hand? Okay, this one is at least stylish. It has some appeal on your desktop, but that's it, right? Well, look at this again, and you see it's totally the other way around. A computer that can be put on your desktop is extremely fast, easily calculates 3.4 billion times a second. Neurons, nerve cells, on the other hand, much slower, maximum calculation speed, 500 operations per second. Computers don't do any mistakes. If you look at an Intel chip of a current generation, it does one mistake in 1 trillion operations. Brains, on the other hand, well, you know that probably from your daily life, much more error prone, and we do mistakes 1 billion times as often. And computers can be plugged to the internet and you are connected with the world, contrary to the brain. Because the brain is 99% self-oriented. Most of the nerve fibers never see what's going on in reality, never get outside of the brain. So from this perspective, you have to say the brain is everything but perfect. From this perspective, you have to say the brain is lame, it is lousy, and it is selfish, and still it is working. Look around you, working brains wherever you look. Really. And you might ask, how come? How is this actually happening if the brain is so much worse than any kind of computer? And the reason for this is that the brain is thinking or working or calculating completely differently from anything we know of from the computer world, from the digitized world, and all the designers of artificial intelligence we do corporations with in Frankfurt, in Switzerland, in the US, haven't figured out that massive difference between brains and artificial intelligence and computers so far. But it is very important for two reasons. First, to understand what is actually happening when we are thinking and what has to happen to improve our way of thinking to get better ideas. It's also a bit tricky. So I help you with an analogy. Crash course neuroscience within 2 minutes. So when people ask you, how does the brain actually work? Forget everything you know of from what you heard, like the brain has algorithms or programs running, or you have a flash drive on your mind, or such kind of garbage. Consider yourself rather going to a concert. You see the orchestra sitting right in front of you, but no one is playing. If you see a silent orchestra right in front of you, you have no idea what kind of music these guys have recently played or are about to play in the next minutes. Same with the brain. When I take a brain and I cut it and I open it and I look at the brain from outside, I have no idea what ideas this brain is able to think. If you look at an orchestra from outside, you see that the music, the melody emerges when the people start to play with each other and interact with themselves. The melody, the music is not stored anywhere in this orchestra. And there is no output musician standing in front of the orchestra saying, here, this is our output, this is our result, here you are. No, the activity dynamics in this system, this is what we call the music. Same with the thought in the brain. A thought is not located anywhere in the brain. Emotions, memories, ideas, knowledge, a thought, thinking is not located anywhere in the brain. And no matter how deeply you look into the brain, you will never find a thought. Because a thought, an idea, knowledge, this is what is happening when the neurons start to interact with each other, just like musicians, and give rise to that kind of dynamics that we call a thought. The problem is, an orchestra is easy to control. You have one conductor, they all know what to play. This is not happening in the brain. The brain is constantly improvising. There is no written script that is played, but we are constantly improvising with all the sensory input that is coming in front of us. So in order to cope with this overwhelming information influx, and you know how many information and how many inputs you have to digest throughout the day, we are bombarded by different kinds of inputs via messaging, via different kinds of media, via different kinds of people. So the brain has to find a way to organize all this kind of information and make sense out of it. And we call that massive difference to artificial intelligence that I would say secret weapon. This is something that makes us unique on the planet because no other animal and no other computer is able to do this, what we call conceptual thinking or categorized thinking. And instead of explaining you the theoretical background, what is going on in the brain, specifically in what kind of region, I will give you an example to show you how fast you are able to come up with new ideas. In a nutshell, the extraction of creativity on our mind and the difference to artificial intelligence. Here's the example. Who thinks that this object here is a chair? Yeah, I feel your support that this is a chair, that you say, yes, I totally agree. I mean, this is not hard work. This is not rocket science. This is a chair. Pretty easy. No tricky question. So far, so good. If you say that this is a chair, okay, what could this be? These kind of objects. Okay, you are quite familiar with furniture, I think. You say this is a chair. I totally agree. Also, very simple, not rocket science. Those objects are chairs. Pretty easy. So here's the task. If you say that those objects are chairs, what could this be, or these kind of objects? This ball with 3 stumps, or this strange object down here, why could this also be a chair? Well, because you can sit on it. And many people say, okay, these objects could be used as chairs, or could be a chair really, because you can sit on it. And this is the massive difference between the brain world and the computer world. What you see up here is what you know from the media, from the news right now. This is what we call artificial intelligence, or machine learning, or big data analysis, deep learning, or you name it. The same basic principle. You show an algorithm a gazillion of images and super many images of chairs and cats and whatever. And you let it analyze and correlate all the different data input. And then it turns out the algorithm says, okay, a chair is an object with, let's say, 98% certainty, an object with 4 legs, a seat, and a backrest. But we don't do that. Human beings, human brains don't do that. We understand that a chair is not a specifically shaped object, but something you can sit on. And once you understood it, you see chairs everywhere. You can create new chairs with new designs, different features. Learning by heart. Learning is great, but it's nothing special. I mean, all kinds of animals learn. Blackbirds learn, dolphins learn, elephants learn, computers learn something, they analyze something, we understand. If you learn something, you can unlearn it. But once you understood it, you cannot de-understand it again. Most of the times. I know some special cases, private stuff. But usually it sticks because once you understood it, you know how you can change it and use that knowledge to manipulate, to solve new problems, to get to new ideas, to places where nobody has ever been before, to be inventive, to be innovative. And this is the massive difference between just analyzing and optimizing stuff or creating something new. If you have a lot of data that can be analyzed, yeah, let's run an algorithm over it and let's optimize it. But if you want to change it and make something new out of it, you need human thinking. You need that special brain activity that makes you understand stuff and put it in a new environment. And you do this extremely fast. And this is one reason why I am not afraid that artificial intelligence will take over and rule the world. And human beings are not needed anymore because we have algorithms for everything. I'll give you another example. My neighbor, by that time I met him, he was 2.5 years old. He walked into my apartment. He stood in the hallway, looked up at the ceiling and said by his own, without asking him. He said, 2.5, 3 years old, he said, oh, smoke detector. And I was like, what? What kind of parents does this little boy have? I mean, are they training him throughout the day like an artificial intelligence with hundreds of images of smoke detectors and fire access and fire extinguishers or what? And then after he learned everything by heart, he sent to me to prove how well he learned all these kind of different devices? Probably not. I mean, his father is a trained firefighter, a professional firefighter. This might play a role, but we know from lab studies that you can show children a new object only once or twice, and they understand the principle of that object. They play with a car, a giraffe, an airplane only once or twice, and they recognize different types of airplanes. They can draw airplanes on their own by only 1, 2, or 3 times of contact with that object. Children do this, you do this as well. Give you another example. How long did it take you to understand the word Brexit? I know I have friends in London who haven't understood that process so far, their own fault, but you have seen that word in the media only once or twice. But that was enough for you to understand the concept of this word. You have not learned this word, you understood it. This is something different, because once you understood it, you can do stuff with it. When you know what a Brexit is, what would a Swexit be? A Frexit, a Spaxit. Never seen a Swexit before, but you have a rough idea what Scandinavian folks are waving goodbye here. And even more, when you know what a Brexit is, you might also know why a remain did not happen in the last seconds before the Brexit, or maybe a return is about to come. Here you see that data itself has no meaning. Human beings create meaning by interpreting and applying data. This poor guy differs from this happy one by 50% in its data. But for us, it is 100% difference, because for us, it is important. What can we do with this kind of data? How can we apply that to a specific problem? And how can we change the environment around us? Many people say, okay, Henning, so far so good. We are thinking in concepts. We are trying to solve problems in a new way. We understand stuff instead of just analyzing it. So far so good. But what is actually happening in the brain when we think like that? And how can we improve that to make people more creative, more innovative, and make them more unique compared to artificial intelligence? If you look at the brain from outside to understand what is happening in the brain when we get to good ideas, and when you open a brain and check out what is actually happening inside, first thing to realize, there is no region where creativity is created, no innovation department in the brain where good ideas are created, and then we have that flash of inspiration, and suddenly we know, this is our new idea, and this is how it has to be done. No. If we get good ideas, if we develop something new, if we understand something, it is a balanced process between the activity of different brain regions. It all starts with understanding the problem first, that we analyze something, that we focus on a specific topic, on a specific problem. every good idea starts with anger and pain. Happy people don't change the world, because if you're happy, there's no need for change. If you're happy, everything has to be consistent, right? Being dissatisfied in an optimistic way more productive. If you have a problem saying, okay, this is really annoying, this is really a pain, how can we solve that kind of problem? And I'm trying to understand that problem at first is the best step. People who are angry or really mad or really annoyed by a problem are usually the ones who change the world, who make the world a better place, because those are the ones who identified a problem at first. You know from your daily life, okay, concentration on problems and focusing, this can be done for hours. So you start to drift away, doing something else. Every one of you is drifting away throughout this talk, including myself. Just a few seconds ago, I thought about something unimportant. But we can do this. We drift away from the problem and activate different brain regions that are more deeply located inside of the brain, who are able to prioritize what is important, what is not important. This is the filter station in the brain that makes it possible to highlight the important aspects of problems and to discard everything that is not so important or not so useful. We call that region hippocampus, and this is basically an important step for the long-term memory, for long-term processing of information, in order to not being overwhelmed by all the information you have. Importantly, this is happening when you do a break, when you are sleeping, or when you are not focusing on a specific problem. Then this hippocampus or these areas are active and prioritizing. And after you have prioritized the different aspects, you have to stitch it together, including new information that is coming from outside. We call it inspiration, in a new brain area that is then able to connect all the different inputs you had, all the different priorities you had, with new input from outside. And this is the reason why we always get the good ideas when we are not focusing on a problem. But typical activities people mention in creativity states of mind usually includes taking a shower, driving a car, during sports, walking the dog, vacuum cleaning the apartment. All these mundane routine activities where you don't have to think actively are really good activities for creativity, because then you are able to drift away from the problem. You get new inspiration from outside, and suddenly you reflect that new input with the problem you had at first, and then you are able to get to better ideas. And this is important, that you keep in mind that this balanced out way of thinking is important to get or to be different from artificial intelligence, because what algorithms do is the opposite. And to put it more straight, there are three different aspects that have to be kept in mind when you want to apply algorithms or artificial intelligence in a digitization strategy in your company. Digitization means that you know the difference between good applications of algorithms and our unique human capacity when it comes to good ideas or changing the world. Again, if you look at the difference between algorithms, or let's say artificial intelligence in a more catchy way, and the brain, you have to keep in mind that not in all cases it is good to apply algorithms. Brains or human ways of thinking is always good when you have poor data, or when you have little data or no data. If the database is pretty bad, human beings are very good at making decisions, and we actually make decisions even though we have only a few data points or no data points. Consider a classic decision that human beings do that an algorithm would never do. Marry somebody. You can do a big data approach for a marriage, but for that you have to test, let's say, 1 million or 2 million different people and check out whether a marriage could be done with that specific person. This is not a good approach. You only have a few options. You only have a few, let's say, persons you test. But after that, poor database, you are making a decision. And this is always the case. If you buy a house, if you buy a company, if you roll out a new product, if you roll out a new service, you don't have a big data approach. You have to give it a shot and then see whether it's going to take off. But for that, you have the courage to take the idea and put it into action. Algorithms, computers are always good when you have big and valid data, when you can analyze a whole data set and making the best out of that data set. But for that, you need a lot of data. Of course, there are situations where you have that amount of data, and then please apply algorithms, but make the decision first. Do I have the data, or do I have only a poor data set? Second, if you are in a non-quantifiable environment where nothing can be measured, where you don't have a KPI, again, a marriage, you cannot measure the success of a marriage. When are you married in a successful way? After 7 years, if you have 5 children, there is no objective KPI for good marriage. Albeit human beings marry each other. And you see that in all these situations where it is very hard to measure something, human thinking and human interaction is more important. If you have measurable parameters, measurable outcome, valid, or if you're able to create valid data, please apply algorithms. Whenever you are able to put numbers on it, use an algorithm. This does not apply for ideas. You cannot measure ideas, as I said, for knowledge, for instance. Also for service. I will show you an example in a minute that good service is very hard to be quantified. I mean, you cannot measure this service was worth 10 points and this was worth 8 points because people are very subjective in their feeling. And if it's about human feeling and human emotions, it is very hard to put numbers on. So this is an aspect that will stay analog in our future. And third, if you have open-ended questions, creativity, new products, new services, then you have to apply that kind of thinking that I've shown you before, that you balance out concentration and drifting away, that you understand the problem, that you give it a shot and see whether it's working or not. If you have processes that can be optimized, and this is the definition of intelligence, please use algorithms. Intelligence is defined that it's a way to optimize and make processes more efficient. But not all processes in our world can be optimized in this way. There are many processes that are inefficient and still we love it. If you hand over a present to somebody, this is usually not an efficient process because we wrap it and the other person is unwrapping it and you have to put thinking time and buying a present. This is an inefficient process, but we are loving handing over presents. We are loving that human interaction that cannot be quantified, where you only have poor data and that cannot be optimized in a way. And I want to give you 3 different examples illustrating that it is very tricky to implement algorithms and what kind of mistakes you should avoid if you want to implement a digitalization or automation strategy in a specific project. First, it's about the data. And if you only have poor data and don't understand the data, the outcome is pretty poor as well. Maybe someone of you is remembering Google Flu. Google Flu was a project in the early 2000s when Google had the idea, let's do a forecast of flu waves, spreading out the flu during the winter season by analyzing what kind of keywords people typed in the Google search engine. And the idea was if people type in words like fever or like coughing or like feeling sick, this might be a good indicator that this person might having a flu. And by doing a forecast of these different search requests, Google claimed that it could forecast the Google flu the flu waves in the winter season. Was a good idea? Was wrong, because people can type in symptoms of a flu for many different reasons. Maybe they have seen a Hollywood movie and maybe they have seen a Hollywood movie and type in, okay, I'm afraid of getting a flu or the killer virus is about to take over. Oh, I type it into Google. And suddenly you create poor data that is still analyzed in a very efficient way. And for instance, this was in South Africa. They had different approaches for North America, for Europe. But for when you had big flu waves, especially in 2008, then the whole system broke down because it was not able to forecast by only analyzing data from the past. I mean, if you analyze data from the past, keep in mind, this is very important to understand how you got to the place you are at now. But it is very hard to do a forecast for a longer season, for a longer period. If you take the data, analyze it, and then make human decisions out of that, what can I do with this data? This is a good approach, but not just following the trend for the future forever, because you have seen that in the last months or years, that trends can be broken down very quickly if you have a stressor from outside, like a virus in this case. Second, sometimes you cannot quantify stuff, especially when it's about service, and then an algorithm should not be implemented. I don't know whether you know the chatbot Amy Ingram. Amy Ingram, AI, was wonderful, a miracle. This chatbot was brilliant. It was rolled out in southeastern of Asia, and people could use this program to organize their calendar, mailings, contacting other people, and was super easy. You just said to this program, okay, call person XYZ or make an appointment in my calendar. And this program was able to analyze your voice, your request, just like a human being, until it turned out it was a human being. They paid people in a call center for just receiving the calls you gave to this program. People pretended to be an algorithm that pretended to be a human being. I mean, this is garbage, right? Whenever it's about human service, whenever it's about something that can be quantified in a hard way, and service and chatbots are non-quantifiable, better rely on a human being. I don't pay for a chatbot. I pay for good service. This is something different. And please don't apply algorithms to replace human beings in situations where human beings are really good, especially in language and doing other people a favor. And third, as equally important as before, it is not only necessary that you focus on the data set or the service character, on the quantifiable possibilities, but only ask open-ended questions. And whenever it's possible to ask what-if questions and don't just analyze the past, please use the human kind of thinking. Otherwise, the system is breaking down. And this is what we all experienced 1 year ago when the toilet paper ran out, because all the supply chains in retail are optimized by these kind of machine learning algorithms that basically say, okay, if people behave like this on Friday, you have to stock this product on Monday and such. And this is very good if everything stays the same. But if there is a little stress from outside, for instance, a pandemic situation, then the whole system is breaking down. If you ask in advance, what would happen if there is a pandemic? What would happen if there is a certain stress from outside? Then you are in front of the wave. Then you are proactively solving problems, not just reacting, but you are in an active adaptive mode. And this is what I'm calling for, because this is the difference between artificial intelligence and human ways of thinking. And especially, and this is why I'm really happy about giving this talk in front of this audience. And when we talked about the content of this talk, I was really impressed by this, by the devices you have when you have this this analyzing protocol or this analyzing methods of how people use disinfection during or in a building, because this is a possibility to analyze human behavior very precisely, create a lot of good data, but then ask after that, how can I use this data? Maybe identify areas in a building where people are not behaving hygienically, or maybe how to stock and refill the stuff more quickly. But this is a human decision. Data itself, as I said at the beginning, is dead. Data has no meaning in itself. But human beings change the world by their proactively interpreting data and making the best decision out of them. And how to do that? How to get good ideas? In the last third of this talk, I want to give you 3 examples how to implement that thinking, this creative thinking, in a real world. I mean, you have seen that human beings, or if you want to make good creative decisions, don't rely on just analyzing the data set. We can come up with good ideas even in poor data environments. It is not always about measuring something. It is about creating something and asking open-ended questions. And I want to give you 3 different examples how this can be put in action. How to engage people, how to make them, or how to, let's say, motivate them to good ideas, to creativity, how to increase that, as I said, non-quantifiable spirit in a team, and why is that so important? And last, what kind of mindset is needed to ask these open-ended questions, to be more than just an analyzing robot. So first, how to motivate people to do good ideas, how to make them more creative in solving problems. In one of my favorite studies, they focused on, I would say, the Champions League of change management. They focused on educating students I think it was 9th graders in mathematics, math class for 9th graders. If you are able to present a math concept, a formula so catchy that 14, 15 years old boys and girls say, wow, this is a cool formula. I will apply this formula in my life. Then you got it. This is leadership XXL. And here is how they started the math class differently from how they usually did it, because they did it. You are a basketball coach. The deciding game in the best of 5 series is about to come. 4 of your starting 5 are already set. But for the last player you can send to court, you have 2 different options, player 1 and player 2. Player 1 scored this way in his last games, player 2 scored this way. Who of these different players is the most consistent one, mathematically? And how would you explain your decision, which of those players is the more consistent one, to your assistant coach? And then you let people do. Keep in mind, 9th graders, 14, 15 years old. And it's interesting what kind of solutions were developed by these boys and girls. Some said, okay, I have to find a way to explain mathematically what kind of player is the more consistent one. And they drew a chart and depicted the scores of the different players in this chart, drew a line in this chart and said, the player with the shorter line is the most consistent player. This is a clever idea. This is a clever solution. This is not a solution you will find in a textbook, of course. Nobody is able to find the correct solution on his own in 19 minutes of math. Not possible. I mean, if you're able to find that solution on your own, it's the formula for the standard deviation. If you are able to find that solution on your own, you are wrong in this class, definitely. You have to do something else with your time, but not waste it in this math class. But this was not what this experiment was about. Interestingly, this is how we treat people usually. We give the solution right at the beginning and say, here, this is how it has to be done. If you do corporate learning, for instance, or educating people, it is usually always the same. Here's the problem. This is one possibility how to fix it. Let's optimize it, for instance. Let's train how to apply that formula. But in this experiment, it turned out, if you ask people the question at first and give them freedom to develop an own idea, which is not 100% correct, they are way more able to understand how this function works, or this formula works. And every time they are in a new situation in their life, when they want to develop a new idea, something unexpected, what to do with a player that scored 80 points in one game. Let it in, leave it out. So if it's about to get to a new frontier, to a new product, to a new solution, to a new idea, you need people who are trained to think actively, not passively by just consuming information and then optimizing it. I mean, this can be done by algorithms, right? What humans are good at is if the database is poor, and then let's try it out. Now let's give it a try and give people freedom in project, for instance, especially at the beginning of a good project. Let people experience on their own what can be done with a new problem, with a new challenge, and don't solve the problem right or try to solve the problem right at the beginning. Try to find the problem, try to find the question at the beginning. The more questions you ask and let people ask, the more likely it is to get to a place nobody has ever been before. Second, it is not enough that you just have people are thinking on their own. Of course, this is good that if people are able to think actively and adaptively, but usually people need some kind of input to get a good ideas. People need to have the possibility to be inspired by others. And this is another very important aspect, number 2, that is required to get to better ideas and be more than just an analyzing robot, but a human being. A good friend of mine is working for a company that does intranet services for large enterprises with 5,000, 10,000, 80,000 employees. And they ask the questions, who are the most creative ones in those kind of companies? What do they have in common? Is it about intelligence? Is it about education? Is it about age? Is it about cultural background? Is it about gender? What is it all about that makes people creative? And it turned out all of these aspects were more or less are not so important. Okay, you have to have some kind of intelligence to be able to think, of course, yeah. But intelligence does not really correlate with creativity. Another aspect was way more important. As I said, they set up intranet services, and when they analyzed the communication profile of the different employees, it turned out the way people communicated in the company was the best indicator for their creativity. So if they analyzed who is sending emails to whom, who is chatting with whom, who is speaking face-to-face with each other, it turned out the more diverse the environment is, the better the ideas of the employees. Here you see a company with 3 different departments, blue, red, and green. Wolfgang, very well connected. A lot of connections, unfortunately, only in the blue department. Turns out that people, despite the fact that they have many connections, if they are very similar, those people are not very creative because they always get the same input. Contrary to this person here, let's call her Anneliese, she's not having many connections, but the different ones into the blue, the red, and the green department. Put it this way, Anneliese does not have to be the brightest candle on the cake, but she has to sit at this interface, at this hub where different ideas meet. And this is very important because only if we are influenced, only if we are inspired by others, we are able to question ourselves. Or as Abraham Lincoln put it, I don't like this man, I have to get to know him better. And this is the spirit we all have to take in order to question ourselves, to challenge ourselves, and be able to get to better ideas. This is the reason why people get to good ideas when they return from vacation. When they are same problem, different environment, different country, different culture, suddenly you get a new idea. And this is the reason why companies really benefit from cross-divisional projects where you ask non-experts. I have never seen a single project that has not benefited from asking someone who's not an expert in this project, usually. Asking naive questions from outside. At the beginning of a project, when you want to develop something new, if you ask people with a different perspective, you usually get to better ideas because this is how change is done. Not by being in your own bubble all the time, but by asking new perspectives, calling for new perspectives, and challenging yourself throughout the day. And last but not least, the story that artificial intelligence will take over and rule the world. This is all over the media right now, but this is nothing new. It was all in the news in May 1997. On this day, Garry Kasparov, the chess champion by this day, was beaten by a chess program by Deep Blue by IBM. Never ever since this happening, a machine lost against a human being. So far, so good. It's interesting to see how the machine took the win. You have to know this match consisted of 6 different games. The situation on the chessboard in game number 2 was pretty clear. Standard situation, short before the end game, the machine played white, Kasparov played black, and suddenly the machine did a strange move. A move Kasparov had never seen before. the machine sacrificed a pawn without anything in return. And Kasparov said, what is happening here? Is this machine creativity? Or are people controlling that program? Because this was such an unmachine, unlogic move that he thought there must be something hidden here. And he, the master of psychological warfare, lost concentration, lost his focus. He was not able to beat the machine after that incident and lost the final game in game number 6. And after that final game, the engineers, the IBM engineers were allowed to look in the protocols to check out what happened in this strange move when the machine did this strange move in game number 2. And they found out in this specific situation, the machine, the program was overloaded. In order to not break down and end up in a blue screen, they installed something that they called a panic mode that allowed the machine, the program, to play just a random move. I tell the story for 3 different reasons. First, it is not always perfection that takes the win. Second, this was the first and probably the last time in history a machine was truly creative. And third, it shows how not to deal with a mistake. IBM fired all the engineers after that incident. They tear down that project, the machine, put it to a museum, and never followed up the idea that the clever mistake in our thinking that separates us from the non-creative machines. Today, machines are perfect. Now, machines don't do any mistakes, but they always analyze something and they optimize a process that can be quantified in a very specific way. Of course, that is important. If you have all this data, please use it to understand a situation, a problem better, and then do the next step. Do something new with that, and step forward to a new solution, to a new product, to a new service. But this is important, that you always keep in mind what is the difference between algorithmic ways of thinking and human ways of thinking. And to sum it up, finally, what is important to get to good ideas and not behave like a robot? Well, first, keep in mind that you always have to actuate people's know-how. As I said in this basketball example, if you challenge people, if you ask them questions and give them freedom to play around, you will be surprised how creative people become, especially in situations that cannot be forecasted. I mean, all our companies, we ourselves will be in situations in 10 years, we have no clue what it's going to be about. We will be in situations we cannot forecast. And to be able to behave adaptively and successful in the future, you need people who are able to think on their own and who are able to cope with new challenges. So enable people to do that, especially in in early phases of projects when it's about to get to better ideas and new perspectives. Second, support this cross-divisional cooperation. As I've said before, the best solutions are already in your company, are already in your project team. You only have to harvest them by bringing people together, by let people ask cross-divisional questions and let them give new input to teams and new perspectives, because this is the great treasure you are having in your company, the know-how of your employees. And third, don't be afraid of making mistakes. I mean, this is the difference. When I was in California, I realized that the mentality between Californians and Germans isn't big. I mean, Californians are just like Germans, but they are less afraid and have more money. But this is enough to change the world, right? Don't be afraid of trying something out. And then if you have an idea, go for it. Invest into this idea. And then you see whether it's going to fly or not. And this is how change is done, not by having the perfect master plan, but by giving it a try and see whether it's working in the future. And what is the next great idea that is changing the world? I have no clue. Nobody knows. But I'm pretty sure it will be created by brains, not by artificial intelligence. It's not because we are more intelligent or more efficient or do less mistakes than computers, but the opposite. We are slower. We are irrational. We are imperfect. We are drifting away and are thinking of something different. We mix up our memories. We are distorted in our memories, but we also understand the way instead of analyzing it. We learn from our failures, and we are able to cooperate with each other. And this is giving us the ultimate cognitive edge we should appreciate and be more proud of, because this is what makes us human. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beck, for a refreshingly optimistic take on what it means to be human and the differences between brains and artificial intelligence. There's a few things there that really resonated with me, and I think with OPHARDT Hygiene. And one of the things you said was, it talked about dissatisfied in an optimistic way. And I think that kind of sums up what we're doing here. We are dissatisfied with the state of hand hygiene, its compliance, but in an optimistic way. And something else that really stood out is your forecast is only as good as your data. And hopefully our commitment to increasing good hand hygiene data will aid good use of artificial intelligence. But I wanted to ask you some questions, hopefully some open-ended, human-to-human questions. And the first question that I had was, I really appreciated how you talked about the need to celebrate the brain's capacity for understanding and for inspiration. And as we look at, say, a huge challenge like climate change, what are the ways in which you think, what roles will human agency play and what roles will artificial intelligence play?
Yeah, this is a pretty important question because in all these big questions and the big challenges we are facing as humankind, it's always important to keep in mind that the symbiosis between technology and human understanding makes the difference. Human collaboration is really giving us the edge to solve problems and fix problems we are having when we apply the technologies to understand the problem better. I'll give you an example. If you analyze pandemic situations, for instance, the better the data is, the better your forecast is, the better that your activities are to basically deal with the pandemics. So data itself has no meaning, but if you analyze data in a good way, for instance, also with climate change, if you analyze all the parameters better and more deeply, you get a more deep insight into the problem, into the challenge itself. And usually what we see in research, when people are really digging deep into the problem and gain a new kind of understanding, see new patterns that they haven't seen before, they are able to come up with better solutions. And then the first step is done and all the other steps follow. That means collaboration is very important. I mean, human beings on their own are not doing anything much. I mean, all the big things in human history have been achieved by human societies, by collaboration, by proactively engaging with each other. And I think this is super important in the future. Yeah.
Great. I feel like the theme of solidarity, collaboration, cooperation has kind of gone throughout this forum. Another question that came in was, do you think that the field of behavioral science or the field of artificial intelligence has the greater capacity to impact hand hygiene?
Both, actually. So if you, I really like the idea that you measure the types of different hygiene behaviors in a building, for instance. If you have a lot of smart dispensers, and then you can measure how people apply disinfection, and then you can see whether there is a need to improve some aspects in a building or in a team or in a corporation, for instance. But keep in mind that hygiene has always, or the behavior has always something to do with performing in habits and in automatic thinking. So for instance, myself, I worked for, I would say, 3-4 years in S2 and S3 labs. And if you do that constantly, working in a sterile environment, you usually have that habit that you are washing your hands. I cannot go throughout the world without washing my hands. And keep in mind that I don't touch my face with my hands because this is inbuilt in my behavior. So keep in mind that all these hygienic procedures people are performing are usually automatic routines that are very deeply stored in the brain. So if you have developed a routine, a habit once, it is very hard, if not impossible, to get rid of it. So of course, changing behavior in the long term is always going with, or it's always relying on building up habits and routines and automatisms. But in order to find out where can I change a habit or change a behavior, artificial intelligence and machine learning and data analysis is giving me a good insight.
We've got a question here about AI and how we classify it. And the question was, if self-learning AI doesn't mean creativity, what is it then? How do we classify it?
Well, intelligence by definition is a procedure to make a process more efficient. And it's always about optimization and making measurable data more efficient. Artificial intelligence is generally used as a term as an overview of different approaches to optimize processes. There is machine learning, there is as another broad headline, including data analysis, including big data analysis, including reinforcement learning, for instance. They're all different types of learning procedures, but they all go for optimization of processes. Creativity is not an optimization process. And there are other aspects of human cognitive thinking that have nothing to do with optimizing things. Just trying out something, that is not optimizing. That is not necessarily efficient. And so keep in mind that artificial intelligence is usually, or intelligence in general, even human intelligence, is only used if you have a process that can be optimized in any kind of way. And so artificial intelligence and human intelligence itself is not enough to be creative. So when we analyze what makes people creative, it is not only about intelligence. Intelligence does not necessarily correlate with creativity. The most intelligent people are not necessarily the most creative ones, and vice versa, because two different aspects of our way of thinking. And here, again, you see that intelligence, and especially artificial intelligence, is not designed to create something new, but is designed to optimize data in a certain way. And we, as human beings, we define what we do with this output, what kind of problems are tackled by this artificial intelligence. So we ask the questions, and artificial intelligence or machine learning is giving us an answer. What we do with this answer, this is upon us. But this is where freedom starts and where good ideas come into play.
That's great. I feel like we're drifting into philosophy, the human will, creativity, freedom, and I love it. Dr. Henning, it's been just a wonderful experience getting to hear a refreshingly optimistic take on divisions between computers and brains. And as someone with a brain that's very good at being human but very bad at being a computer, I really appreciated this. Thank you so much for sharing this with us today.
Thanks for having me. Great possibility, and thanks for this nice event. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. You'll notice on your screen right now, there is an opportunity to give some feedback, and we would love to get your feedback from this event. What did you like? Where is there room for improvement? Customer feedback is at the heart of how we make things here at OPHARDT Hygiene. We have our engineers right in our production facilities so that when we get customer feedback, sometimes it's only an hour before we've implemented changes into our lines. And this is no different. We want to hear from you, and we want this to affect how we interact in the future. Heiner, it's good to be joined by you again. We've had a great time today, and I'm wondering if there's anything from today's Brain Forum that stood out to you.
Just a general comment. I really would enjoy that we meet next time. I think it's important that we can discuss things when I hold a beer in my hand or a glass of wine, and in this circumstances that we are shutting up and listening to your ideas. Another thought is a little bit how we communicate also in the future, which is very important, I think, for me to do. Yeah, like that we learn again from you also what you bring to us, and that is what I've learned today again is our total strength in our, we would call it, like I would call it, bench strength, and I think that's a term from training with a team. I'm always impressed of the bench strength we have in this organization. And I'm grown up in this organization. I am an OPHART product in that sense, in the wider sense, but I'm still amazed, like the things we have done, and they are not present sometimes in your mind. And I really appreciate that, to see the talent within the organization, and thank you.
So on behalf of OPHART, thank you so much for deciding to share this time with us. And thank you for your interactions. And absolutely, we hope next year we'll be doing this with wine or beer in hand, able to talk together. Thank you.
Thank you.